Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon. I am a retired New York City police detective with 20 plus years of law enforcement. If you like all things true crime related from a police perspective, please consider hitting that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you will get all things DutyRon when I go live or upload another video. And tonight we're going to talk about Serenity McKinney and Harmony Montgomery. Those cases, the two children who were failed by DCYF. Horrible, horrifying case. But before we get into these two cases, I want to say a special thank you to the Patreon supporters, the channel members, and all of the folks who positively engage in all of our live streams. You are what makes this place a great community to interact in. And I want to thank everybody for that. My moderators, the replay viewers, and all the folks who subscribe and positively engage. Now, guys, I wanted to just say tonight I have actually two guests, but one of the guests is a former DCYF worker. She spent 7 years in the trenches doing all different aspects of the Child Protective Services agency. She worked in Florida. She has a great, vast knowledge of what it takes and what is entailed in this line of work. And we've been waiting for such a long time because each time I reached out to somebody, I would get a conversation, but I wouldn't be able to get someone to come on and talk. So I tip my cap to her, even though I don't have a cap on tonight. I tip my cap to her for being brave and coming on with us. She's a wonderful mom. She's a great wife, and she is really, I feel, brave to come on and talk about this. And she's going to talk candidly with us about what goes on, how these cases start out, how they get investigated, what are some of the hurdles that are involved, and what type of obstacles that hold them back from doing their job. Because let's remember, not all child welfare, BCW, however you want to say it, DCYF, not all of these child social workers, social case workers, whatever you want to call their titles. There's different titles. There's different, levels of folks who do these investigations. They are not all evil people. They are just working in a agency that has so many things that hold them back and that hold them down. So they're out there trying to do a job, and they have their hands tied. And there's a lot of things that are involved that we don't know about. And I hope tonight we can bring some of that out. Before we get into it, I just want to show you a quick clip from New Hampshire DCYF. This is from 2017, so 5 years. This is 5 years old footage, and it's from DCYF in New Hampshire. And I'm going to play this for you. It's going to set up what we're about to talk about. Remember, folks, this is from 5 years ago.
Last fiscal year in New Hampshire, the Division for Children, Youth, and Families handled roughly 2,500 cases. DCYF is in charge of protecting children from abuse and neglect, but that work can be tough on the people doing it.
There definitely is a lot of turnover and a lot of people that have left just because they just couldn't do it anymore.
This woman, who doesn't want to be identified, was a DCYF social worker from 2007 to 2009, spending about 60 to 90 days with each family.
It was a really long 2 years of just feeling like you were climbing up a hill that was never going to get, you're never going to get to the top.
The primary reason for that, she says, was the caseload.
You cannot sustain a caseload of, 30, 40, 50, whatever, for a long period of time. You can't expect that your workers are going to do that.
Depending on the kind of work being done, the national average caseload can vary. But a New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services spokesperson says the national average is roughly 12 per employee. In addition to being understaffed, the former worker says there was a lack of support by management.
And that's really why I left, because I felt like, if I was going to be up all night and not sleeping and, worrying about these little kiddos, that the agency should at least be giving us the tools that we needed to be able to provide them with safety.
After 2 children with ties to DCYF were murdered in recent years, their mothers were convicted, and their deaths prompting an investigation. An independent reviewer determined the division is in fact severely understaffed and recommends increasing the number of social workers, improving the training for those workers, increasing the number of supervisors, and enforcing a strict 60-day policy for completing assessments.
And DCYF is one unfortunate example of kind of a victim, if you will, of going down a path of an antiquated system that couldn't keep up with today's issues.
Earlier this year, just days before she was set to retire, Governor Chris Sununu put DCYF Director Lorraine Bartlett on administrative leave after learning more than 1,500 cases were closed over a 2-day period in February 2016.
I think management as a whole is part of the problem over there. And again, we just have to relook at it. I think a lot of people have passion and
I want you guys to realize that this is the same governor. This is 5 years ago. This is the same governor that we're going to hear, fast forward to 2022, come back at us with the same line of bullshit. So this is the guy. This is Governor Sununu, and this is from 2017. And doesn't this sound familiar, folks? To my people in the back room and to everybody who's paying attention, by a show of hands in the chat, who has heard this hogwash before?
and understanding for what they're trying to achieve.
1,500 cases were closed over a 2-day period in February 2016.
I think management as a whole.
So they closed 1,500 cases in 2 gosh darn days. Shame on them, because those are children who fell through the cracks. You cannot possibly close 1,500 cases in 2 days the right way. There is no way. I investigated. I had 100 cases in my caseload as one detective, and I couldn't even close that many cases in that amount of time. My whole squad couldn't do that, and I had a squad of a lot of detectives. So this is crazy.
Is part of the problem over there. And again, we just have to relook at it. I think a lot of people have passion and understanding for what they're trying to achieve, but we have to look at ourselves in terms of, have we created a structure over there that is unmanageable?
Ashley Rossiter thinks so. She was a social worker there from 2013 to 2016. Rossiter says she worked late to investigate reports of children in unsafe situations, but was reprimanded for doing so.
It started off with investigations and then ultimately a letter of warning, which led up to my termination in October.
Rossiter is now suing the state, claiming she was discriminated against for putting in extra time in order to help.
I think that some of the cases that I mentioned in my complaint needed to be brought to light so that these things don't keep happening, so that there's not another death in New Hampshire that could have been prevented by DCYF.
Kudos to her. That was 5 years ago, and she has, I'm not sure what happened with her case, but she sued state of New Hampshire. I don't know where she got with it, but she was one of the brave ones that stood up. She lost her job, and she said, you know what? F you. I'm going to speak about it. So there needs to be more people like her out there to, shout it out from the rooftops what's going on. And this is from 5 years ago.
Rossiter also believes the division should examine prior reports for similar incidents, especially when they repeatedly happen within a family. The governor says getting DCYF turned around is a priority.
So we really need to look at these kids, look at the outcomes we're trying to achieve, look at management, get the funding where it needs to be, and really put an effort to make sure this is an issue that has first and foremost priority in the state of New Hampshire.
Fast forward 5 years, and we have Harmony Montgomery. Harmony Montgomery, 5 years of talking and not doing anything. This guy, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care what anybody thinks. In my eyes, this guy is garbage. This is just horrible. Horrible situation. Horrible, a complete and total failure in my eyes of,
Kristen Carosa, WMUR,
it just
News 9.
It gets my blood boiling. And I'll tell you right now, with what's going on and everything that's been happening, I just don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I'm pulling my hair out. And look at me, I got no hair. So there's that. This is politics 101. And we hear and see this happening on a regular basis, where people are just talking a bunch of hogwash. We have Harmony Montgomery. We have Serenity McKinney. We have countless others. Summer Wells. Look at what happened to the boys over in California City, Orrin and Orson West. And we talk about Thomas Valva. So there's just so many people who, and children who fall through the cracks and the system fails them. Joining me tonight is the brave woman who I speak about, and that's Heather. She's from Florida, and she's got 7 years in this business. She's now out of this field and was very, very generous and gracious to come on. She's running a household down in Florida. She ran over to her mom's to get some quiet time. She has her mic muted, so she's got to unmute that. And I'm going to add Heather onto the stream with me. Heather, thank you so much for joining Crime Time with DutyRon.
No problem.
Yes.
I was excited to have the opportunity.
Yes. And, you and I have been speaking so much about this. We've been covering and talking about Harmony Montgomery. We've been talking about all the different things. And I introduced you to the former DCYF worker from New Hampshire. We're not going to mention her name, but she reached out to me and said, "Hey, Ron, I have a lot to say." If you can, quickly, before we get into your conversation, which entailed almost 5 hours of conversation, just give the folks a little bit of your background slowly and let them know what your credentials are.
Okay, so I worked for the Department of Children and Families for a total of about 7.5 years. The first 3 I worked in investigations, and then the rest of it I worked at a community-based care organization, which in Florida were privatized. So investigations is not privatized, but case management on that end is privatized. So that's who I work for.
Gotcha.
For 4 years.
And you did investigations where you went out in the field and you went to the homes based on calls into, I guess, the hotline. Is it?
Yes.
It?
Yes, sir.
Yes. A difficult job at best. And I know we have a lot of people. There's over 300 people and growing in the chat here. Everybody has questions. We're going to hold those questions until the end. We'll have a question and answer period. But I do want to just get a little bit of groundwork for, what happens when, let's just say, somebody from the local area says, we suspect that something's going on inside a household. Just walk us. You don't have to go into the nitty gritty, but basically what happens when a call comes in and it's something serious, where they're saying a child's being beaten or a child's being neglected or abused or is in danger, is being hurt. What happens with a report? And we could talk about Florida, we could talk about New Hampshire, but just curious about that.
Okay, so Florida and New Hampshire differ when it comes to this. So I'll speak on Florida, and then if you want, I can speak on New Hampshire as well. But in Florida, a person would call the abuse hotline, and then they make a determination if it rises to a level of abuse, abuse, abandonment, or neglect. And then it's given either an immediate, which is under 4 hours, but they typically try to do it in under 2 hours, or a 24-hour case. And that depends on the level of severity of abuse. If a child is currently alone, if a child is found, if law enforcement found a child out in the street and they can't locate the parent, that would be an immediate, because obviously it's an immediate situation. Right. So, there are various different reasons. And so then after that hotline call is made, then it would be distributed to whichever office has that jurisdiction, and then to an investigator, and then the investigator would start I'll call it the pre-contact process.
Pre-contact. And let's talk a little bit about New Hampshire, because we know that it's a little different. And in Harmony's case, the father was given custody, Adam, from Massachusetts, and then it was this transfer thing. I don't remember the exact wording, but the case now moved from the state of Massachusetts into New Hampshire. And it seemed like there was no follow-up, and it seemed like Massachusetts didn't look at this guy's criminal history, and they made a decision to put her in his custody when he had shot somebody in the face and tried to kill somebody, and wasn't successful at it, and spent about a year in jail for that crime. How does that happen? How does the authorities in Massachusetts, the child welfare or whatever they're called in Massachusetts, how do they say, you know what, we think it's a better decision that she stays with her dad who shot somebody in the face? I mean, what happens there? What did you guys talk about that on the phone at all a little bit?
We did talk about it. I did a lot of reading also.
Right.
And what I found was the child was removed in the state of Massachusetts, and it was a Massachusetts judge that ordered the child to move in with dad. What the states typically do is called interstate compact. It's called an ICPC. And basically what it is Massachusetts would request New Hampshire to do a home study, go into the home, get dad's criminal history, get
Right.
his
interstate compact agreement.
Yes,
is what
that's
they're
it.
saying.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Psychic Sleuth. Thank you. And thank you for the email, by the way. I read it. I just didn't get a chance to go over it. Heather, go ahead. And I think this gave me a chance to slow you down a little bit, because I know
Okay.
for some of the folks here, I know you like to talk quick. You're like a New Yorker, and I love it. So,
Okay.
yes. So let's continue on.
So what they would do is request a home study to be completed, and the home study, they would check his backgrounds, they would walk through his house, document it. There's a lot that goes into a home study, just making sure that he is an appropriate placement for the child. And so what happened was Massachusetts requested New Hampshire to do this. New Hampshire said to Massachusetts, we need more information. I couldn't find where they ever got the information that they needed from Massachusetts. And then the judge just court ordered for the child to be placed in the dad's home with no home study.
Wow.
And the research I did was I used all like legitimate websites. All the things that I read were like news media articles. I did a lot of digging because that was my question, was why would this happen?
Right.
And that's what I found.
Is it typical? I mean, I know in New York, they call it BCW, Bureau of Child Welfare. BCW used to call us, the Detective Bureau, to do background checks on, parents or even foster. Like when they would do there would be that whole case study of everybody within that household. And here in New York, they would check everybody in that family to see if they had criminal history, if they were drug dealing, if they had arrest history for sexual offenses. Massachusetts has some splaining to do, I would think, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
I've never heard of that happening in Florida. In Florida, if there's going to be a home study completed, the department runs the background screens, and it is the same screens that law enforcement runs.
Right.
So they would have had all of his criminal history.
Yeah, it just seems so odd and off-putting that an agency, I don't care what size it is, I don't care what state it's in, that's basic 101, is if you're going to place, or if a judge is going to rule that one parent or the other, and they get it wrong constantly, I think that somebody should be thinking like outside the box and say, hey, we messed up in 2017 and we messed up in the past. Why don't we put some buffers in place where we have a checks and balances of, hey, let's not just make it like this is a meat market and let's just move kids around. But anyways, I want to play the second piece that backs up that 2017. So here's the governor of New Hampshire. Fast forward to 5 years in the future. Fast forward to 2022. And here's what he had to say. So Heather, if you can mute, that'll be great. All right. I'm going to share this screen, and this is going to blow your mind because, again, it's just a whole bunch more of garbage where he's going to talk about how DCYF is now stronger than it's ever been. And I played this on a previous live stream. It's just mind-blowing. It's just baffling to me that this can happen in 2022. So what did I do? Whoops. All right, so DutyRon with technology. I stink at this. Here we go. I got it, guys. Never fear. DutyRon doesn't give up. Here we go. All right, so here he is, 5 years older. He looks kind of the same to me. He looks like a weasel.
Or is this a Massachusetts DCF Is this a DCYF?
So she's asking about Harmony's case. Is this a DCYF case or is this a Massachusetts case? This is a reporter that's asking the tough questions. And this is the director of New Hampshire DCYF. And he goes on here to say how great of shape they're in. This is on the back of Harmony Montgomery, completely missing for 2 years, almost 2 years. She's been unaccounted for.
Is this a DCYF case or is this a Massachusetts DCF case or whatever they're called?
Can't answer that.
Or whatever they call
DCYF
it.
Director Joe.
She goes, or whatever they call it. I like this lady.
Is this a DCYF case or is this a Massachusetts DCF case or whatever they're called?
Can't answer that one.
DCYF Director Joe Ripsum says when he came on board 4 years ago, New Hampshire's child protective system was in crisis. But now,
That was what we saw, that the previous video from the beginning. For all of you who are coming, they are jagaloons. For those of you who are coming in late, early on, we played a video from 5 years in the past. And 2 children lost their lives on the back of New Hampshire DCYF. Now, fast forward 5 years, this is it.
caseloads for social workers are dramatically low. New Hampshire's child protective system was in crisis. But now, caseloads for social workers are dramatically lower and cutting-edge family support programs are in place.
Bullshit.
The governor agrees.
No, the system is not in disarray. We have terrific people that run DCYF. We brought in a whole new team just a few years.
The governor agrees.
No, the system is not in disarray. We have terrific people that run DCYF. We brought in a whole new team just a few years ago, revamped our systems, revamped our quality assurance and control process, and they work very hard at all these cases all across the state.
A source close to the child tells News 9 investigates that Harmony was reunited with her father, Adam Montgomery, after time in foster care in Massachusetts. DCYF says in general, once reunification happens, contact with the family is reduced gradually. Caseworkers have to focus on the active investigations. There are about 12,000 a year in the state.
It's difficult to account for things that happen when we're not engaged with the family. And I think a lot of what is really important right now is to try to figure out what has been happening with this young girl for the last few years.
Ripsum says thousands of reports of suspected abuse and neglect come into the agency every year, and the public never sees what action DCYF takes. And he knows that's frustrating. A high-profile case like Harmony Montgomery's does trigger an internal review.
These are very tough cases, to be sure. I don't think they're indicative of a system of failure per se.
You hopeful?
He since has backpedaled and is calling for a complete investigation on what happened to Harmony Montgomery. So this was early on, and these two were just saying that there's nothing wrong. We got this. We've revamped this system. It is stronger than it's ever been. Bullshit.
You have to be.
Harmony's mother not only wants to find her daughter, she says she wants to track down her daughter's father, Adam Montgomery, who she says she hasn't had contact with.
All right. I've heard enough of that. I got to get that off. Heather, adding you back on mute. What's your take on that with the director of New Hampshire's DCYF saying it's not systematic problems. We have it all under control. Have you heard that before?
Not when I was working with the department, but I have obviously seen those kind of clips on the news. I think that a lot of that is, if you're under investigation, do you really want to, if there is an internal review, do they want to say, maybe we made some mistakes? No, because then the news media could run with that and be like, oh, look, they've made mistakes. But I do also think if I was that child, if I was Harmony's family, I would want them to say, this is where we messed up, and this is how we're going to do better next time.
Right. And they subsequent, and I'm glad you just said that, because after this, the backlash came from this. And I don't think it was necessarily from Harmony's her mom, her birth mom. She's been vocal, but I think it was more outrage from the community and just people random people just calling his office and saying, how dare you? You have a 5-year-old who's now 7 who nobody knows what happened to her when she came into New Hampshire. Now, he just did one of these after this. Massachusetts, it's their fault. And Massachusetts going, she went there to New Hampshire. How come they didn't check on her? How come when the numerous phone calls were made to the house in New Hampshire and the police came, there was no follow-ups from DCYF. They made 2 referrals to them, but they closed both the cases. They were living in a house with a generator, using a powered generator. I don't know about the food. We don't have access to the case file. You or I don't have that access. But you definitely did speak to our friend, who we're not going to name, who worked in that system. And she had some insight as to why and how this happens. High caseload, pressure from bosses to close cases. We just heard 1,500 cases closed in 2 days in 2017. How does that happen?
I don't know how you would do that.
It's humanly impossible. Even if you have 1,000 caseworkers, it's impossible to close in 2 days 1,500 cases. That sounds like, to me, hey, we're going to be audited. It's time to crunch the numbers. When we would, in the police department, when we would hand in reports for robberies, they would get downgraded to criminal mischiefs. How is somebody being forcefully strong-armed and having their wallet taken from them a criminal mischief? So again, it was a way for the police department to fudge their numbers and make it sound, and I can only talk about this now because I'm retired a decade. If I was still on the job and said that, I would probably be suspended tomorrow or brought in and placed on desk duty. And that's part of the problem. Lieutenant Pete Pranzo here from the NYPD, he knows what I'm talking about when they would say, oh, there's no ticket quota, when at roll call we would be told, hey, make sure you get your 30 tickets this month. And it took a cop recording that in the Bronx and going public with it. And what happened to him? God only knows what happened to him. But so that's the crazy part. And this is all on the backs and the lives of our children. The future of America. And that's what we're looking at. Now, I just wanted to ask you, like, what was an average caseload per investigator in Florida back in the day? Was it 12? Was it 25? Or was there a cutoff? Did they say, hey, you know, you need help now, we're going to take some of your cases? When people would quit, you'd get their cases, right? I know all about that. Talk a little bit about it.
They never took cases. I never had that happen. I would say the lowest was 12 and the highest was 42.
42.
38
so okay, so one person investigating or doing or being responsible for the health and well-being of 42 different cases. That's very hard to do. And there was also time constraints that our friend talked about. She talked to me on no uncertain terms about her bosses telling her, hey, you can only spend 15 minutes when you go out at a person's home, when you do a home visit or whatever. I don't even remember the term, but when you do this home visit, you have 15 minutes. How in God's name can you make a determination that the place is safe for a child in 15 minutes?
Well, and in New Hampshire, their investigations work a little bit different. They have to, before they go out on an initial visit with the family, they have to make 2 attempts to contact the family to let them know, hey, we have an intake. In Florida, you don't do that. And so she also told me, I think she had over 60 cases. I can't remember exactly the number. It was over 60 cases.
Jesus.
That I can't even imagine.
Yeah. It's mind-boggling. And she also talked about how she would go home and be worried about what was going on with her cases and how she would she has PTSD. And you even spoke to me about having PTSD from some of the things that you've seen over your time. So you guys are humans. You're most of you are mothers, right? You know, or aspiring to have a family, and now you're seeing this. It's not the ideal job. The hours are long. The pay isn't great, at least in New Hampshire we know of. I know you said the pay was okay in Florida there, but it attributes to a high turnover rate when you have hard working conditions, low pay, and just being bounced all over the place. Where you know that it's the right thing to do is to spend. You can't say, well, I only got 15 minutes. There's certain families it takes an hour to even get answers out of them and to get to the root of what's going on within the house. So,
And to build a rapport, you can't build a rapport with somebody in 15 minutes.
no. It's crazy, Heather. I'm just baffled by so much of it. Again, so you get this call, it's a high level case where they send you out within that 4-hour period. You go solo? Do you go with the police? People want to know, like, what's the procedure?
Okay. In New Hampshire, they were told not to call the police, or their supervisor would call the police. But at that point, they were at the home, so the police would not typically show up. And in Florida, in my experience, if it was believed to be dangerous, if there was a reason to believe it was dangerous, then you would take law enforcement. But for the most part, we did not take law enforcement, because sometimes, no offense to anybody that works in law enforcement, but sometimes it's easier to get people to talk when, you're a person just in plain clothes and you're, hey, I'm just here. I'm here to help.
Right. I get it,
like,
because if the cops are there, it's going to make them all, you're trying to get them to relax, to speak to you. You have a uniformed cop there, they're going to feel like, oh, I'm under the bright lights, I'm being scrutinized.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I had a great relationship with law enforcement. I only ever had a few times where I was trying to talk to someone where the law enforcement officer got like a little aggressive. Right. And, as not being law enforcement, I didn't want to tell them, hey, can you please back down? Because like the family's not going to talk. You're kind of having, I didn't want to say that to them because I respect their position. But for the most part, law enforcement, I had a great relationship with them. So I didn't really have a lot of, I think I only ever had one time where I was like, okay.
Right.
We're here to help.
I almost felt like it was the same way as if I had a family dispute and we called for backup, and then the two backup cops would come in and just start the whole thing back up, where the people would just start arguing with each other. It's the same kind of concept. You build that rapport. You don't want someone to come in and just shake up the tree on you. And I get that 100%. So again, we looked at this outline. You have that 4-hour response time when a call comes into the hotline, or it could be a 24-hour response time. What makes it what's the qualifications to make it, okay, we got 24 hours to go there? Can you explain that to the folks a little bit?
Okay. Typically, I can't remember exactly, and I actually tried to find this in the standard operating procedure, and I wasn't able to find it. I know that it's somewhere. But it's basically, if it's an immediate situation, like I said, if you have a situation where mom and dad get arrested and there's no caregiver for the child, that would probably be an immediate, because I say probably because, there could be other things at play. But if there's an immediate reason that you need to get the child, like the child actively just got injured by the parent and somebody witnessed it, that would be a situation. And then also if you have marks and bruises on a young child, right. That's also an immediate.
Right. And I told you the story about when I was on patrol, when we had a child with bugs crawling all over him. It was a little infant, like maybe, I don't know if it was an infant, but it was probably not more than 6 months old. Little baby in a bassinet. And there was a family dispute that I was on, and we heard this child crying in the midst of the two arguing. So we get them all settled. Me and my partner go to, say that we both look at each other and we're like, hey, let's go check on that baby. So I go and check on the baby, and there's roaches crawling in the ears, up the nose, and the mouth, like it was infested. So I made the decision. I was like, I'm calling my supervisor, and we're going to call child BCW. And BCW didn't want to come out. And then my sergeant had to get on the phone and demand that they come. We waited for 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours for them. They showed up. They went right to the refrigerator. They looked. There was juice, milk, and food. It was very minimal food. And they said, we're not going to make a removal. And I went home and I told my wife that. And it was early in my career, so I didn't have kids yet. But I was like, who does that to a kid? Like I said to the lady, and I got a complaint from her for being discourteous. I said, Miss, you got more than your problem with your husband going out and buying a 40 ounce with your money and the dispute that you're having here. You should clean this place up. And she said that was like, that was discourteous for me to tell her to clean her place up. She's got roaches crawling all over her kid. So I was more pissed about that part. And I was pissed that DCW said, there's no problem here. There's no bite marks on the kid. They did it. They looked at the child. They looked at her. I was there. And they said, it's fine. I was like, oh my God, just mind blowing. I want to play another clip. This is an older video from CBS today. It's from the morning show, and I want you guys to see the day in life of a caseworker, social worker, whatever you want to call them, investigators. I call them investigators. They're out there doing investigations, right? Is that right, Heather? I'm being fair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So investigators. Here's a clip from early on in CBS. I'm going to remove Heather. She's good. Look, she's already paused her mic. Love her. Heather's great. She fits right into this whole crime time with DutyRon thing. Let me get this going for you guys. Here we go. I'm going to put it back.
Only on CBS this morning, exposing new information on issues that impact all of us. Today, we are focusing on the challenges facing child protective services workers. 5-year-old AJ Friend was found dead in Illinois in April, and his parents were charged with murder.
Afterward, we started looking into how something like this could allegedly happen despite previous interventions by police and child welfare workers. We discovered hundreds of American children known to CPS agencies die of maltreatment every year. CTM national correspondent Jerika Duncan set out to learn why. Jerika, what did you find out?
This is why we do what we do as journalists, to really delve into important issues. We spent a day with a Child Protective Services caseworker in Outagamie County, Wisconsin. What we witnessed was disturbing, heartbreaking, and real. For the protection of the children, we agreed to hide the parents' identities. This is a story about the challenges facing the men and women tasked with ensuring the safety of children across this country.
Relapse is my biggest concern.
This woman is pregnant with her 5th child and admits using methamphetamines as recently as 2 weeks ago.
There's not much I can do.
It's Brittany Plowman's job to determine whether the kids living here are in danger.
I have some packets of information, one for each child.
As a caseworker for the Children, Youth, and Families Division in Outagamie County, Wisconsin, Plowman has already helped by putting 2 of the kids in daycare, where one just took her first steps.
She walked, and I didn't get to be there.
It's difficult that you got to miss out on that.
It is.
So this is a typical day for you.
Yeah, multiple of these back to back, but yeah.
Whew, that was pretty heavy.
Plowman handles new cases, typically working with about 15 families at once. She's one of 28 social workers in a county of more than 180,000 people.
There are things that you can't fathom, on a day-to-day basis. You can't fathom that a parent would do this to their child.
I pushed him into the wall.
Her goal is to keep families together, but she's had to separate about a dozen of them in the past 3 years.
Have you ever had doubts about whether or not you should have removed a child from their home?
Oh yeah, there's definitely doubt. Am I doing the right thing? Who's going to suffer from this the most?
In 2017 alone, an estimated 1,720 children died from abuse and neglect in the U.S.
That is from 2017, 5 years ago, folks. A mind-boggling statistic. Throw COVID-19 and a pandemic in there, and these numbers are definitely amplified. And there's no question about it. With being locked down and in the house, no contact with the outside world, investigators perhaps from child welfare not going out and not going in and doing these visits the way they were supposed to be doing. You have a recipe for disaster.
U.S. More than a quarter of those children.
Who's
Anybody see the glassy-eyed? This DCYF worker is emotional. You can see in this interview right here, I'm looking at her eyeballs, and she is visibly shaken.
Her goal is to keep families together, but she's had to separate about a dozen of them in the past 3 years.
Have you ever had doubts about whether or not you should have removed a child from their home?
Oh yeah, there's definitely doubt. Am I doing the right thing? You know, who's going to suffer from this the most?
In 2017 alone, an estimated 1,720 children died from abuse and neglect in the U.S. More than a quarter of those children were previously known to Child Protective Services.
27% previously known to CPS agencies. That means there was either a case open or closed, some type of contact with child welfare. 27%. I'm sure that those figures are higher now.
Agencies. The issue came to light earlier this year with the death of 5-year-old AJ Friend in Illinois.
Investigators located what they believe to be AJ's body, buried in a shallow grave wrapped in plastic.
Police charged his parents with murder. Child welfare.
I'm going to put that back because I want you to see the face of evil. These are evil, sick monsters right
They
here.
believe to be AJ's body, buried in a shallow grave wrapped in plastic.
Police charged his
Disgusting.
parents with murder. Child welfare workers had been called to their home before. Stories like that frustrate Maine State Senator Bill Diamond, who's been focused on this issue for nearly 2 decades.
We're not making progress.
The former teacher has introduced a bill pushing for a long-term commission to study the problems within his state's Child Protective Services Department.
Kids are being abused right now while you and I are talking. They're being abused terribly. The only reason we don't know who they are is because they haven't died yet.
Experts say caseworkers in many areas are underpaid and overworked. Reports of abuse have increased more than 12% since 2013, partly because of tougher laws requiring the reporting of suspected abuse, along with an increase in calls related to the opioid epidemic. This mother says her addiction began with a prescription for painkillers after oral surgery 15 years ago.
Like, I've never been homeless. I would hate to become homeless, but there are worse things. Not being with my children would be one of them things.
Have you?
So she said there would be worse things than becoming homeless. It would be not having my child with me. It's just heartbreaking what's been going on. And the opioid epidemic has not gone anywhere. It's gotten worse. It's not gotten better. It's gotten worse.
Ever had your children taken from you?
Yes.
Here in Outagamie County, the number of kids in foster care has doubled over the past 4 years. But Brittany Plowman says she believes the children in this household are safe for now, with their father at home and with the additional assistance the county is providing.
Do you think this issue doesn't get enough attention?
More often than not, it's the bad stuff that surfaces and not the good. And I feel like that needs more attention because there's a lot of good that comes from child welfare. It's not just about removals.
The bottom line.
And I agree with that. I do agree with that. And I'm going to take myself. I agree with that because I feel like there is, like I said in the beginning of this broadcast, there is more good than bad in all of the. Listen, if you go into this line of work, you have to care about children. And Heather, you can attest to that. You don't go into this line of work to become rich and famous.
Negative.
There you go. So again, this is I brought this up because I searched for child welfare and some folks to speak about it. You know, I wanted to see if there was multiple videos on DCYF workers, and there were workers. There were some, but most of them didn't want to speak on camera, had their voices changed or blurred out. But there is a fan of Crime Time with DutyRon, a subscriber. She is an advocate for AJ Friend. She has a page on Facebook. It's called Roar for AJ. And her name is Tracy. She is joining us, but she's having some technical difficulties. I'm hoping her mic is working. I'm going to add Tracy. Her screen name says Roar for AJ. Tracy, thank you. She's been coming in and out during the whole course of the whole show. I don't know what's going on with her Wi-Fi, but I'm going to kick her out again, and hopefully she'll come back. I'm going to show her Facebook page. She's been advocating for this boy and for justice for all children who die at the hands of an abusive parent or family member. And this is her Facebook group. I'm going to put it up. It's in a page. I'm going to go full screen with it. It's called Roar for AJ, and she's doing so much to bring awareness, signatures for laws, and following the case of the social workers, the supervisor, and there was a supervisor and a social worker, caseworker who was arrested behind AJ's case. This 5-year-old who was killed at the hands of its parents on April 15th, 2019, murdered by the mom, and as you saw, the father there. This page is just asking for volunteers. She's asking for I believe this is her on our way to deliver donations for a child advocacy center in McKinney. So here's some pictures of Tracy, I believe, and doing her thing. She's collecting like 1,700 pairs of shoes for the 1,700 children who were killed at the hands of their family members and loved ones, and she's bringing them to, I believe, the governor's office. So Tracy is a warrior. She is awesome. I want you guys to link that page, that Facebook page. It's called Roar, ROAR, for AJ. She's trying to come back in, but it says her device is not connected. She was in the studio with the camera on for a minute while I was showing the video, but I don't know what's going on. I'm praying that she can fix it. I'm gonna try to add her again, and that's what we get right there. Frustrating, to say the least, because I really did want to hear from Tracy, because she's doing wonderful things for this boy. And I want to go back to the page. I'm going to just remove her and hope that she comes back on. I want you guys to see this child's face, killed at the age of 5. It's reminiscent of, Serenity, Harmony, Montgomery, Summer Wells. They're all at that age. The boys in California City. We have Michael, Monkey, the little boy out in Idaho, I believe it is. Just so horrible, just horrible. I want to pull the chat because we're coming close to the hour. Heather, you got to unmute so this way I can talk to you. Let's say, Heather, hello to some of the people in the chat. Wolf Girl is here, and a great friend, channel member, and moderator. Thank you for joining. AJ, Roar for AJ. I'm hoping that she restarts her phone and comes back in. So many people sending messages. Precious Me says New Hampshire DHHS has been terrible for a long time, and as long as I can remember. Yeah, I mean, by a show of hands, who's here from the New Hampshire, Massachusetts area? I'd love to hear from you on DutyRon.com. Send me messages from stories that you have. I want to hear about it. Heather, again, before we start pooling the chat and asking questions, anything that I might have missed? I mean, I know I played a lot of media and things of that nature. Anything that maybe you can touch on to enlighten some of these folks on, or ideas that you might have that could help improve the current situation of what we have going on with DCYF, DCF, or whatever, Bureau of Child Welfare?
So obviously there's things that could be improved within the system. I think more workers would be helpful, but I think as far as like the viewers, the best thing is if you see something, say something. Either say something calling the hotline, or if you have a neighbor who is struggling with children, if you have a neighbor that has a couple kids and you see that they're struggling, instead of, being like, oh, like what's going on over there, walk over and say, hey, how's it going? Listen, sometimes moms and dads just need somebody to listen to them. And I really, really strongly believe that if community stepped up, then there would be less of a need for DCYF or DCF or other entities. If there was more community involvement and community, hey, let me help my neighbor who is struggling. Hey, why don't our kids play together? Or, do you need a babysitter? It's a whole lot easier to point a finger at somebody else than to point the finger at yourself and say, what can I do to make things different?
Yeah, I agree. And I always say, you know, if you see something, say something, or if you see or know of something that's not right within your family. I think that, you know, so many people are just keep their mouth shut and say, well, I got to mind my own business, right? We hear that a lot. We hear people go to that extreme, like, well, I'm not going to tell somebody how to parent, how to be parents. But if something is not right and something is standing out to you, I think, you know, it's better for you to make either make contact with that person and say, hey, is there something I can help you with? Do you need assistance with anything? Instead of turning your head the other way and saying, you know, I'm just going to mind my own business. Fuzzy Doxy, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Thank you, DutyRon, for all you do. No, thank you for all you do. It's folks like yourself and the interaction that we have here that makes this really a great place. Soul for Music, thank you, Stacy, for the $5 super chat. She's a foster mom. She's got, you know, many healthy, thriving foster children in her household, and she's a great, wonderful mother. I know her personally from conversations. She's actually sent me real pancake syrup, maple syrup from her family farm up north. She lives, I'm not going to give away where she lives, but she lives in that New Hampshire area. So thank you so much, Soul for Music. You are awesome sauce. Everybody is always welcome here in the chat. And, you know, again, we all have our thoughts and opinions. There's people that don't like child welfare workers. They feel like they ruin people's lives and they grab families and break families up, but they're just trying to do a job. And they're doing a job under very extreme duress. You know, they have, again, supervisors telling them, let's go, chop, let's go, next case, let's go. You're taking too much time. And that is adding to the problem. It's adding to the problem because who suffers for that? The children. Because if a worker like Heather wants to be thorough, but she knows she's going to come into her office and her boss is going to ream her out and fry her a new ass, then she's going to just rush through it, you know? And that's why the high turnover rate. People quit and say, oh, this, I'm not doing this job because I can't do the job with what they're telling me I have to do. So that needs to be revamped. More workers, but more training, more supervision. And what about body cams? We have cops running around with body cams all over the place. Why not, for the protection of the caseworker, investigator, and for the family? So now a judge can see what this caseworker went into the house and was seeing, instead of a judge dismissing a caseworker. Oh, you don't know what you. No, if the judge can review this body cam, how valuable would that be? Heather, can you speak about that?
I think that if there were body cams on social workers and they were ever released to the public, some of the things that you see are so much worse than you can imagine. I almost think that people would side with social workers better. Like, if you saw some of the, you know, because a lot of times people will say, oh, DCF did this in my personal life. My husband used to say, well, she said the DCF said XYZ. And I used to say, if it sounds too dumb to be true, it probably is. I think that there's a lot that DCF workers see, and a lot of DCF workers don't want to talk about it with good reason, because, you know, you don't want to, you know, tell other people's stories. But I think that it would be, I mean, I think there are challenges, just like, you know, with law enforcement, there are challenges with body cams, but I do think that it would, you know, a lot of people say, oh, the DCF worker said this, and they could just be like, oh, listen to the tape. No, I didn't say that.
Right. Yeah. It's for the protection of the worker, and it's for protection of the child. So if you, let's just say a CPS worker comes into the courtroom and maybe doesn't convey the message the proper way, or maybe doesn't articulate in the right way to the judge. And some of these judges are older. A lot of them are just don't have patience. It's like, come on, I get next case. I want to get onto. It's the same thing with the courts, with family court. They're like, oh, I want to get through my docket. I want to get through all these things. So they kind of like, it's like either shit or get off the pot. They want to hear what you have to say, but if you have that body cam footage to back it up, like, hey, here's me entering the home. This is what I see, and this is what I was. This is the answers that I got from the mother or the father or both. It makes it pretty. It makes it a more of a clearer picture. That's what I was looking to try to say. Go ahead.
I would say that in my experience, the judges locally, we had the entire time that I ever went before a judge, I would say we had superior judges. I really liked all the judges that I ever went before. We have really good judges. I mean, when I worked for the department, we had amazing judges.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's the thing, again, I said in the beginning of the show, there are some times, and I'll revert back to Thomas Valber. And I know you don't know the case that well. I did introduce you to it quickly while we're on the phone, but his mother, who is a good mom, who is a Polish immigrant who came to this country from Poland and had 3 children with a New York City cop, had her children ripped away from her because of child welfare, the family court system, and the whole system failed her. And they took custody. She had custody of her children. They got divorced. The father was able to bamboozle the courts, and they granted him custody. And her son wound up freezing to death in a garage. And she pleaded with the court. This is Justina Zubko-Valva. She pleaded for her son Thomas, who is now deceased, Andrew, and Anthony. And Anthony is also autistic along with Thomas. She told the court and CPS and all of the system, all the people, that my kids are going to die. They're going to kill them. And you know what they told her in court? The judge said, shut up. They told her to shut up. And if she kept talking, they would find her in contempt. So this woman screamed and begged. I went to the funeral for this kid because it happened in my neighborhood. It happened here in my area where I live. And seeing that little boy in a casket with a white suit on it blew my mind. It totally mind fucked me to no end. It was the worst thing that I've ever seen. And I said to myself, there's something very wrong, system-wide, probably worldwide, but here in the United States, New York, fail. Florida, I don't know. Pass or fail, maybe not. We got to do better. That's the thing. We have to do better. There's failures on both ends. There's good parents having their children ripped away from them for no reason, because maybe they didn't answer their questions right, or maybe things just didn't seem right and it really wasn't, or false allegations that somehow get substantiated. We're not living in a perfect world. We're all human beings. These aren't robots or machines that are responding to these things. It's human beings. There's good and bad in everything. And I'm the first to admit it. There's bad cops and good cops. There's bad CPS workers and good CPS workers. It's like that in every field, mechanics, everything. So the bottom line is we have problems. We have problems in the courts. We have problems throughout the system from the top. I always say this, from the top down. People failed. The police department failed this family, Thomas. The police department failed Harmony. The police department failed Serenity. And the list goes on and on. AJ was failed. AJ Friend. It's just horrifying. And, again, until the people that are responsible, the high-end supervision coming from the states, every state has control of some of these agencies. And then I know when it goes into counties, some counties have it. So it's like multifaceted. But the state, the governor and the state attorney general have oversight on all of the counties. We know this. But if we have systemic-wide changes where there's checks and balances, and the checks and balances can be put into place slowly but surely, but they need to happen. You got a guy Sununu talking in 2017, 5 years ago, and he's saying the same bullshit in 2022, talking about, oh, we're going to do a top to bottom review. The same people are talking about the same bullshit. Lucina Holland says, at the pediatric special needs facility where I work, the majority of parents with children in CPS custody are opioid dependent. It's such a sad situation. You can see they struggle. The struggle really is real. Yeah. Thank you so much for that super chat and that message. Yeah. Opioids and drug, all different various drug addictions, heroin, everything right down the line is just soaring. And people who were on the fence of recovery and COVID happened, just put them right over, made them fall right off the fence. So a lot of people with drinking problems started drinking more. Again, parents and children are all locked in with COVID. So now you have more abuse going on, and the cases have to have soared, but we don't hear about it. They don't talk about those numbers. They're just, courts stopped working. CPS workers stopped making those home visits, right? Did that happen in Florida? I know Florida's a little bit lenient with the COVID and the masks, and I know here in New York, they weren't doing those home visits the way they usually were doing because of COVID.
I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
I checked into it here because I have a friend who, several friends still work at the PD, and he said that they weren't doing it. You know what they were doing? Remote. They were doing it remote. Like, oh, do you have an iPad or do you have a thing? No? All right, we're going to send you one. We're going to give you an iPad, and we're going to do the, okay, gather around, kids. The child welfare wants to just do a check. We're going to pan around, and that's what they did. And how does that work? It's freaking crazy. Again, I want to say thank you to you. We're at the hour minute mark. I want to say thank you, Heather, for being brave and coming on. I know that you spent 5 hours with our New Hampshire DCYF worker. She gave you a lot of info. What were some of the takeaways that really freaked you out or really just bugged you out about your conversation that you could speak about here before we wrap up?
Okay. I think the biggest thing, which I can't remember if I said this, was that up there they basically warn the parents before they come to see them. That's pretty concerning because you don't find things.
Right, hold on a second. Hold on. So for those of you who didn't hear what she just said, she said they warn the parents before they respond in New Hampshire. In other words, New Hampshire tells them, hey, we're coming to check on you and your family unit. Ali Oxenfried, get yourself ready and let's go. And they give them a period of time to get their shit together, essentially.
Yes, and they have to at least make 2 attempts before just showing up the home. And in Florida, that is not how it works. In Florida, it's like cold call only showing up at somebody's house.
Yeah, that's what.
In Florida, go ahead. Sorry.
That's what they do here in New York. It's like it's catching them the element of surprise and catching them when things aren't all hunky-dory, so there's not time for people to make it nice and make a presentation. Let me read this reel with Robo because she is definitely jumping up and down because it seems like she was done dirty by CPS until they can answer why my kids were given to a drug addict, an abusive alcoholic. I will never believe CPS workers care. They don't. In your eyes and in your case, I can understand and I completely get it if that is what happened. And I believe that is what happened because we see what happened with Harmony Montgomery. She was given to her father, who was an attempted murderer. The guy, Adam Montgomery, is a piece of garbage. He's human garbage. He's violent. He's a drug addict. He's on heroin. He's a heroin junkie. And they gave her to him. And look, we don't know where she is. So, Real with Robo, my heart breaks for you. And there's many people, and we've talked about this, that came on the wrong end of the stick here. Thomas Valva's mother, Justina Zupko Valva, look it up. She begged and pleaded. She had 40 plus complaints put into CPS by teachers, by police, by neighbors, by everybody and anybody. 40 plus reports of the children eating out of garbage cans in school, and CPS in Suffolk County, New York, said that there's unfounded. The case is unfounded. How does it happen? By a show of hands here, and I'm not trying to gang up on Heather because Heather is retired. Who does not have confidence in child welfare, BCW's, DCYF? Put a 1 in the chat if you don't have faith in them. Put a 2 in the chat if you do. Put a 3 in the chat if you're not sure. How about that? Let's be fair. I just want to do a pool. I like to do this because I like to see what people, because some people feel different ways. I see a lot of 1s coming in. I don't see any 2s. I don't see any 3s. Oh my. Oh,
hell no.
All right, there's a 3. Thank you for that. Polygraph says it is a 3. Again, this is no laughing matter, but I do want to see what we're working with here. So a lot of people do not have any faith, and they're looking at, like this woman said in that last article, we always highlight and hear about the bad, but we never hear about the good things. And that's the unfortunate part. The news always wants to highlight the bad and only the bad. Vet Girl RWB says, do prosecutors discuss the adult's criminal history with CPS before children are returned? Great question.
It wouldn't be the prosecutors. That's something that CPS would have access to, because they would have access to it at the beginning, and then they can rerun the background screens as the case progresses. So they would have that information, yes.
Yes.
Or I should say they should have that information, yes.
They should, but I don't think in Massachusetts they had that, because had they had that, I'm not so sure a judge would say, yeah, I think Harmony's better off with the father.
No, according to the article I read, there was no home study completed and no criminal history.
All right, we're going to say that slower. There was no home study completed and no criminal history checked.
Obtained, yep.
Obtained. That is colossal failure. Colossal failure, right? I mean, that's such an easy thing to obtain. It's so easy to obtain. All they got to do is ask. I think people feel this way because of the limited power caseworkers have. Yeah, and again, all the obstacles that they have to go through, the hoops they have to jump through. It's not their fault that the system that's in place that they're working for is limiting them in the good that they can do by giving them short time constraints, by telling them to close out their cases, by telling them, hey, we got to move on to the next one. You can't spend time with this family.
She hit the nail on the head. I think that the belief is like, oh, investigators or caseworkers have the power to just remove children, when it's like, no, there's a lot that goes into it. I know that, like that other person said, that they had a terrible experience. So I'm not, saying that isn't the case, because there are terrible experiences that happen with DCF, period, just like with any other entity. But you have power, but it's like power within a fenced-in yard.
Right. Yeah. And I think, and you can correct me and stop me at any time if I'm saying something wrong here, but I think the real consensus here and the real thing that all families should strive for is to not have child welfare get involved. It circles back to what we were saying, Heather, is try to work out and reach out to your family member or your friend and say, hey, can I help you? Can I help you with something? Guess what? Tracy is here. I'm going to add her quick, but her mic is muted. So Tracy, roar for AJ. Tracy is here with us. Hi. Oh my God. Hi, Tracy. I'm so happy that you made it.
I'm so sorry.
Well, listen. All right, we got you on.
Can you hear me?
Can you talk a little bit to the audience about what got you into this AJ Friends case? Roll for AJ. I still have it up on my computer screen, and I want to show it, but I want you to talk just a little bit of how you got involved in this case. I know that you don't know the family personally. I know that you're just advocating for AJ. I'm hoping that she can hear me, and I want her to be able to talk. She can't hear. Oh no. All right. I gave it my best shot, Heather. I gave it my best shot. I wanted her to come on and talk. But you know what? I think I'll do another show and I'll just have her come on and explain everything. But I'm going to link Raw for AJ's Facebook group down in the comment section here. But as we were saying before, I got so excited when I saw actually her face and picture. Don't let CPS or child welfare be involved if they don't have to be. If you can handle it within yourself where a child, like there's plenty of grandparents who are raising the kids, right? Without any involvement. They're just like good grandparents on maybe one side or both sides. And they're like, we'll take the kids while you struggle through your addiction or whatever is going on. The kids will be safe with me. And a lot of mothers and fathers say, you know what? That's a burden that's taken off of me. And a lot of grandparents, I saw it in the projects where I worked as a cop. It would be the grandparents, in their 60s and 70s, raising these little kids, and they were happy to do it if they were physically able to. And I think that's the thing. That's the thing of it, is that don't let it get to where the state, has to be involved, or the county, because once they become involved, they have to, there's room for it to go wrong, and there's room for your children to be removed and placed in foster care, and then, God forbid, you can have another sad situation that happens. The foster system is far from perfect. It's got its flaws. Sandra, yes, I'm going to have her on. Any questions in the chat maybe that we haven't answered? You don't have to send super chats to get questions answered. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to look quickly. Heather, I know you got to run. You got a family that's waiting for you. Your husband's probably going crazy with the kids if they woke up. They woke up, he's just like, oh, get home, hurry. Anybody have any questions? Coexist 2020 says, what percentage of calls received are false complaints? People doing it for vengeance and being to be pricks and nasty people. Did you get a lot of that in Florida?
I don't know what the percentage is. I don't even remember ever being told what the percentage is. And that is not something I did any research on. So I don't know, but
Did you have any calls where it was bullshit? A vindictive parent, a scorned lover who left, or a jealous neighbor, things of that nature?
Yes. I mean, it was not often, but yes.
Yeah. So there you go. So
you can see through that kind of stuff.
Yeah, she's reluctant.
You know what I mean?
She's reluctantly answering it, but I'll answer it for her. The answer is yes. We don't know how high of a percentage it is, but there are a lot of scumbags out there that'll make false claims, and that will bog the system down too.
The thing is, though, you can. I would say, in my own experience, not speaking for anyone else, you can see through that kind of BS pretty quickly. Because when you talk to the person, you're like, you start asking questions that they don't really have answers to, and you're just like, okay.
Right. Here's a good one from Rose, my good friend. So Sarah said, Heather, it was amazing hearing what you had to say. Thank you. So Rose says, DutyRon, when a child is returned home, why does CPS back off kids when they're still in danger? I know that she meant CPS. So in this case, that's what they're saying. Massachusetts is saying when she went to Harmony, went to New Hampshire, the interaction slowly decreases or completely decreases at that point. Why is that?
I'm not 100% sure. Like, I don't know why you would decrease it if a child is in danger. That's not something I ever have heard of in Florida.
Okay. All right. That's something for us to look into, and we'll ask our friend from New Hampshire about that, because that, you had a 5-hour conversation, so maybe you can have another 5. Maybe you can have another 5 with her. So she's checking her notes real quick, because Heather is very thorough, and I'll say she sent me a Word document that is 4 pages long, and I thank you for that, because she is awesome. This is what a good investigator does. I'm doing good. Let's see. I'm looking for more questions. I had a BS call on me. Michelle, by a show of hands, how many people here have been a victim of BS calls from CPS or against you? I'm seeing a lot of that in the chat. Here's one from Miss Psychic Sleuth. Does CPS have to be the department that removes the child, or can the cops remove it if they feel the child's in immediate danger? I can answer that. Yes. If a police officer sees severe injuries, something that is life-threatening, something that is, emergency exception rule, we had the authority to take temporarily the kid away from the parents, pending CPS response and confirmation. Again, I was that close to taking that kid out of that crib, but there's such a small girl. It was a little baby girl, such a small girl. I left it up to my sergeant. I called my supervisor, and he said, "No, let's secure this apartment. Let's wait and I waited almost 4 hours. It was the longest 4 hours of my life. And we waited for child welfare to come, and then they just came and said, "Oh, everything's fine. You guys can go now." I was like so pissed about that, because I thought for sure they were going to at least get medical attention. I wanted that kid checked out. Was there a bug lodged in its ears or up its nose? The roaches were crawling in her every orifice: her mouth, her ears, her nose, in her eyes, eating off the corners of her eyes. It was disgusting. So Jackie Vineyard does all of my chapters for me. So I want to shout out Jackie real quick right now here in the chat. She is freaking awesome. She spends hours reviewing all of my videos and making them into chapters. And she's just awesome. Awesome sauce. I love her. So thank you, Jackie. Appreciate everything that you do. So yeah, I'm not even going to highlight that Coexist 2020 because that's toxic nonsense that I don't get involved in. So Vet Girl says, is every state different? No. I think police have the power in every state, if they see an emergency exception, to make a temporary removal. I've taken kids to Spofford that's the temporary holding place where kids are evaluated for injuries or mental torture or things. It's something that we see as an emergency. If a kid's locked up in a room and whatever, and there's an allegation, a teenager says that the parents are abusing them, we will separate them temporarily pending a full investigation. And then we do that. We have the authority to do that. Okay, one or two more. Hi, guys. So happy to have caught this live stream for once, even if it's at the end. Watching you from Korea. Well, thank you so much for joining from Korea. I'd like to know how many people are outside the country watching. So if you're outside the country, let me know where you're watching from. And let's say quickly hello to everybody checking in from outside the country. So Korea is here watching. 432 people still checking in, listening to what we have to say. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Let's see who else is here. Great job. Thank you, Jackie. Great job. Yes, she does a great job on the chapters for all of us. Here's Sydney, Australia, checking in. Indonesia. Nabhi. Is that no B? Am I saying that wrong? Right? Ladies, can somebody help me out? Jen? No Bihi? All right. I'm screwing it up. Manchester, the UK is checking in. Thank you. Anika is checking in from South Africa. Thank you for joining. Hello from Alberta, Canada. Good to see you. Witness for the Truth 2018. Appreciate that. All right, Kimberly Myers from Bakersfield, California. She says, Heather, foster care compared to bio parents, as many complaints. I don't know. That's an incomplete. Try giving it another shot. Portugal is checking in. UK. That's Jules from Portugal. Someone's telling me, let my guests speak. That is nice. That's nice of you. Jen, am I talking too much? Should I let you speak, Jen? Hold on. That person is no longer with us. That person is gone. I'm just trying to take care of a little bit of business here in the chat. Let's see. Mystery Maven is checking in. She's from local. She's not from anywhere outside the country, but she is our criminal defense attorney. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Jess. Sandra from Ireland, checking in from Sandra, Ireland. Thank you. Woodstock, Georgia, checking in. And that's about it. I think we're going to wrap it up. So one more kind compliment to you from Miss Psychic Sleuth. She says, Heather, guest, what is the most uplifting situation you recall from your career? Ooh, that's a good one. I like that.
So I won't give the details, but I had a case and I worked really hard on it. And the parent came back months later and gave me a hug and said, if it wasn't for me, she would still have been in that situation. And we hugged and cried.
That is
that was.
You know what? That's rewarding. That was worth it. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that caseworkers are made of, and those are the good things that again we talked about, that we don't hear about those things, and I think it's wonderful. So kudos to you, and I'm sure that you have many more stories that are comparable to that, of things that you did and the extra time that you took. And for you to tell me, Heather, that you suffer from PTSD from your job, and you didn't even, like I did 20 years in the police department. I responded to the World Trade Center. I've seen many crime scenes, and I am just one of the blessed few that do not have PTSD or anything major. But sometimes things come back and haunt me, and just could be little things. Want to talk?
Like, I have never been like diagnosed or anything with PTSD, but there are certain smells. If I smell something, I'm just like, it brings me back to a date. I can remember dates really vividly, or I can remember times and certain areas if I go,
Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, it's such a difficult job to do because you have so many interactions with families. And
I think that one thing that like the news media will never tell you is like, investigators, when you're an investigator, at least for myself, I can speak for myself and a friend that I was speaking to recently, I've been gone from the department for a couple of years now, and I still like think about kids that I had cases on. I still wonder how they're doing. I still pray for them, even though it's been years, I had a case from about, 11 years ago that I was thinking about today. And I just, it's like, and you never know. You just hope that like something that I did or said made a difference.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is like there's some interactions that you never know what impact you had on those people, but you just hope that you did something positive. And that was like a lot of my takeaways, like from what I did. I always try to walk away and say, I did the best that I could. I might not have fixed or corrected the situation, but I did what I could with what I had to work with,
100%.
So here we are, hour and 23 minutes. I guess I got to pay you overtime. Are you going to be putting an overtime slip in? Heather, would you please promise to come back?
Sure.
I know that I talked a lot, and I was trying to get over some of my notes because, believe it or not, I have a complete cheat sheet here too. So I needed to get to some of these questions that I wanted to ask you. I apologize. Again, I do talk. I am the host of the show, so I do talk. When we have things that we want to discuss, we talk on the phone, and I think that we, by no way, shape, or form, covered everything that we wanted to cover here tonight. It's just can't do it in an hour and 20 minutes. We could, like you said, you spoke to our friend for 5 hours on a Friday night. That's amazing. It's amazing. And was it mainly all shop talk, or was it talk about the gross neglect in New Hampshire? What was it about?
It was mostly a lot of shop talk, and a lot of me learning and understanding what it's like up there, because I'm not saying that Florida is perfect. I'm not saying Florida does everything right, but it definitely is a lot different. She and I had some of the same things that, why people get out of it, leave child welfare, but I definitely had great supervisors. I worked with a lot of great people. I had, like I said, great judges. The best, I think probably the best judges that probably in the nation. They listened, they were not pro DCF by any means, but they weren't they respected us. I think that, at least in my experience professionally, I had a lot of respect, and I think that not everybody, not everywhere has that.
Yeah. Yeah. That helps a lot when you have, judges that respect the work that you do. One more question from Wanda Sanders. She says, how much belief does CPS put into what the children say? My son was 5 when he was abused at his dad's home, and they said he was too young to be believable. Oh.
I cannot imagine that. I cannot speak for that worker, but I can tell you that I always say, believe children. Because I think that a lot of people have this idea that children make false allegations. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I'm telling you that listen to what children say. And a child can be qualified. A child can qualify for truth or a lie probably, I would say around 5. Younger children, they can be, but sometimes kids do tell stories, but like kids aren't going to tell stories. I don't know if I should say that. Typically, kids are not going to tell stories about being abused if it's not true. Right. Especially they're not, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's just my opinion. I don't think the kids tell stories about being abused when they're not being abused.
Right. Hey, and I want to ask Wanda a follow-up. Now, here's a question we want to ask you. What state and did police follow up on that? Did you, if it was your child, or did she's talking about her son? So did you call the police? I'm just curious, and this is hard to do this by text message and us being on a live, but I'm just curious if you contacted the police and if the police did some follow up based on the abuse. I don't know if that was sexual abuse or physical abuse. So she just says her 5-year-old son was abused at the dad's home. So I was just curious about that. And if we don't get to it, please send it to me on DutyRon.com because I'd like to know more about that. I'm going to highlight Tracy. This is who we were trying to get on the show. Tracy Coatsman from Raw for AJ. She says, listen, believe, support, T-port. I don't know.
Report. I think that's right. Report.
Yeah. Support to report. Support to port. Okay. I got it. All right, guys. An hour and 30 minutes. We got to wrap it. So thank you, Jennifer, for being here. Much love and respect from the Crime Time with DutyRon community. You've gotten a lot of praise on here. People are telling me I'm Italian and I'm jabberjawing to shut up. But that's okay. I don't shut up. We're going to come back and we're going to do it again. And you've already promised to do that. So thank you. Any final words for any of the parents out there when it comes to dealing with CPS, child welfare? Any tips, anything that you could give them?
I think just like you said, try not to get DCF's involvement. And I would say, if you ever have DCF's involvement, don't automatically assume that they are terrible people, because they're not all terrible. But, at the same time, if this is one thing that I said a lot and I still say, if you protect your kids, DCF doesn't have to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Very well said. Thank you for those closing words, and we'll have you back again sometime soon. I want to just say this. I always try to end these things on a positive note. God bless the world. We are in a crisis right now, with what's going on in Russia and the Ukraine. It's a difficult time for Americans. It's a difficult time for all of the world. So I want to pray and say prayers for the people of Ukraine and everybody that's in the middle of this, our soldiers from the U.S. and from all the coalition forces that are over there. We hope and pray that for their safety. I like to end the live streams by saying, God bless the world, God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, and all victims of crime and their families, but especially our little ones, Harmony Montgomery, Serenity McKinney, and all of our children that are out there. They need us now more than ever, and let's try to do better for them. So thank you again, Heather, and I will talk to you all soon. Heather, hang around for the end of this. Don't go anywhere. Peace, guys, from DutyRon.